Hello, hello, hello. This is Haley Lynn Gray, and I have an amazing guest with you today. This is a dear friend of mine. This is Elizabeth Stephenson, and she is an amazing person. She is a family law attorney here in the area, and she's a great resource. One of those, truly amazing people who cares about her clients. And this can be a really kind of crazy time of year for us as we're going through the holidays and into the new year. And, people are starting to make resolutions and decide what their next year is really going to look like. And there is so much planning that really needs to go on at this point in our lives. And I know that you have got a great workshop coming up soon now. So tell us a little bit about your workshop.
I will. The firm I'm with is New Direction Family Law, and we wanted to do something different to help people move through the process of separation and divorce. And not just advocate and be legal expertise for them, but we wanted to help them in all areas of their life. And so For a Better Life is a year-long workshop series that focuses on health, wealth, wisdom, and love. And so when you're going through a separation and divorce, or even not going through a separation and divorce, those are all areas of your life that we can make resolutions about to do things in a better way. And so they start on the second Saturday, or the first Saturday of each month, and we have a different topic each month. But in January, we have our whole panel of facilitators that will be there as experts in all of those areas, health, wealth, wisdom, and love, to talk about what they're going to talk about in their workshop and provide some really good feedback on how to start the new year off right on a good foot.
Okay, so what are some of the topics that they're specifically going to cover in the workshop?
Well, let's take February, for instance. We've got a nutritional and dietitian who's going to talk about food, mood, your food and your mood, and how that affects your life. We've got things that talk about retirement, how to plan your wealth and your health. Child psychologist who's going to talk about having a better relationship if you're in a relationship, or how to step back and look at why you're not and how to make that better. And how to, things like mortgage, how to do your mortgage. Do you want to sell your house? And then how to declutter and start fresh and let go and move forward. Okay,
some really good stuff that you guys are going to be covering. And I mean, this is really good even, if you're not separated or divorcing, this is the information that you really need, in your life.
Right.
So lots of great panelists and experts doing these workshops. So.
Right, and the first one, as I talked about, it's the panel with all of our facilitators. And so we're offering that free because we want people to come and see and find out if this is something that would be beneficial to them. So we want to open it up, and you can go to our webpage at New Direction Family Law, and there's a For a Better Life tab. Click on that, and then you can sign up. No cost. Takes an hour and a half, 2 hours of your day to find out how you can move forward and have the life that you want and deserve, whether you're going through separation and divorce or just, plodding through life.
Very cool. So, hello people. I see we've got some people online. Brianna and Ken, feel free to hop in and ask us questions as we're going through this, because it's a lot more fun when it's interactive, and, we'll be happy to answer questions for you. So, one of the biggest questions I think a lot of people have is, or one question I would ask you are, what are the top mistakes people make before they come and talk to you that you wish that they would have talked to you first about?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I think one is, we believe at New Direction Family Law, but even with the For a Better Life and with our firm, that education is power. So if you're thinking about separating, or there are some issues in your relationship, come and talk to us, because the biggest mistake people make are they may leave their residence, and or they may leave and not take their children, or separate and not have a custody agreement or a court order in place. And those are things that can really wreak havoc, that you can prepare for and make a plan for, so that you can separate in a way that's positive and that can support your family in a new direction because you're going to be in two separate households. So take, for instance, somebody leaves, and it's not an issue about domestic violence, but you just want to get out. And if you leave your home before you have a separation agreement or you have a court order, you're not allowed to go back. The person who stays can change the locks, and you're left without any of your furniture, personal belongings, any way to go back and get it unless they agree or a court order lets you back in. So there are ways to step back and plan and say, so in 3 months I want to separate. Here are the things that I need to do. Things like finding a place to live, opening your own checking account. A lot of people don't have their own credit, so we start building their credit and getting their credit report so they can do that. Haven't been working for a while? Well, let's look at how we can help you get back in the workforce, because yes, you may get alimony and spousal support or child support, but that's not going to last forever, and you do and you will at some point have to make your own income to support yourself and your family.
I think those are really good points that, you know, if you were really contemplating any kind of a separation or a divorce, you know, or if you think there's any kind of a possibility of that, I mean, you guys offer resources, and, you know, that pre-planning can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That's right. That's right. And we have a really trusted network of professionals that we work with. It's things that you might not think about, but people come in here and wills are not part of what's on their mind. But if you're separating and divorcing, you need to really think, step back and think, what do I need to change in all aspects of my life? So we have an estate attorney we work with, financial planners and advisors that we work with. Somebody's going to stay in a house, somebody's going to buy a house. So we have mortgage brokers and real estate agents that we trust, that we know will take care of our clients. And so we help them put together that plan and look down the road about what's best for them and not just jump off the cliff without thinking.
And that's a good point, is that don't just jump off of a cliff without thinking.
Right. Because when you do that, climbing back up that mountain is really hard. So let's take some steps to logically and thoughtfully go down the mountain so that we can, you know, get you where you need to be without just sort of jumping, as we say.
Very cool. Hey, Judy, good to see you. Hey, Paulina, good to see you too. Feel free to hop in with your questions. And let us know. So tell us a little bit about, you know, you've mentioned a number of different topics, but you also do work with adoptions as well, right?
We do. We cover, all aspects of family law, and that includes adoptions. The most common we get are step-parent adoptions, where someone remarries and perhaps the biological other parent isn't involved, has not been involved. And so they're forming a new family and they want to adopt this child so that they can start and blend that family. So we can help them with those sorts of things. There are grandparent adoptions. There are what we call termination of parental rights, when one parent has not been involved, hasn't paid any support. And so you want to sever those parental ties so that that child and you can move forward in a new life. So we do help them with that. We also work a lot with victims of domestic violence, because unfortunately, a lot of times when people separate, that's a really big issue, and that's the main cause of why they want to separate. But that brings a lot of issues with it. And so we help them plan how to leave, and we suggest that they hook up with community organizations like Interact, Safe Child, that can provide them perhaps safe housing, counseling, those sorts of things. And we also help them in the area of getting protective orders. So that's a big part of what we do too for folks.
Okay, so some of the resources are Interact?
Interact, it's in Wake County, and most counties have the same sort of thing, but it's a support and services, and they also offer housing for folks who have to get out because of domestic violence, and gives them a place to stay until they can get on their feet and move forward and have a place for themselves to stay.
Yeah. So then that kind of brings back a question to me from something that you were talking about earlier, is you want to be careful about when you leave your home, and you want to have some planning in place, you know, except in the case of domestic violence. What ends up happening to your possessions and your stuff in your home if you have to leave due to domestic violence.
Right, and we call it a 50B. It's called a domestic violence protective order. So if it is an emergency where you are in imminent fear that someone's going to harm you, or they have, you can go immediately down. We have a special floor dedicated in Wake County to domestic violence, and so you can get an immediate emergency order, and that order orders the other partner out of the home and gives you possession of the home. So at least some point, you are back in the house pretty quickly. But then the question becomes, I'm back in the house, but the person who supported me isn't supporting me anymore. So then we have the issue of doing things like child support, spousal support, and getting some temporary orders in place that can help you get through that initial period.
Okay, and how long does that initial period typically take?
Ooh, that's a loaded question.
I know, I'm full of crazy questions.
It really is uniquely case by case, because there are some cases that can come in, they're able to talk, they've worked through what they want to do and say, here's what we've agreed to, or mostly what we've agreed to, and I can draft up a separation agreement for them, and if they all agree, we sign off, we're done, and we're done. But there are some other cases that, by no fault of the client, are contentious and have to be litigated. And so that can take, if you're going to wind through the court system for property, that can take a year or so to get through all of that. And biggest mistake people make is, once you're separated, you don't have to have a piece of paper or anything signed that says you're separated. If you leave with the intent to remain separate and apart, you're separated. And that's when it takes a year to get divorced in North Carolina. But during that time, you can take care of all those other issues like custody and child support and spousal support and dividing up your property. So they're two really separate issues that people sometimes don't understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's good to know, is that, the separation is not something that you necessarily have to have on a piece of paper.
You don't. And people think that, we're living in separate bedrooms. Well, no, that's not separated. You have to physically be in two separate households for that year to start ticking for your divorce. So that's a big issue too. And how do you, logically plan out who's going to leave and how that's going to happen is the big issue. Getting separated is the hardest thing, really.
Right. So tell me a little bit about counseling, because I know that you refer a lot of people to counseling.
We do. I'm a big believer. I'm a former social worker. Well, I'm still a social worker. And so I truly believe that people who come to us a lot of times are in the worst place in their lives. And if you have someone where you can go and talk about what's going on and have someone help you work through those issues, that can help me help them advocate better, because then they can focus on what they need to do to help me, like get their documents together, help prepare for trial or mediation. So when you've got someone in therapy that's supporting you through the issues about your separation and divorce, that can only help you in the legal arena too, not just personally, but help me get you the best settlement that can help you move forward.
Okay, cool. We've had a couple of questions come in. We'll answer the first question last.
Okay.
But this one here is I have a question to ask. Every state has different laws, but as far as parental kidnapping, do you have to be married?
There's an issue about parental kidnapping. If you're a parent and you take your child and you leave the state and there's no court order or agreement in place, that's not kidnapping, because each parent has a constitutional right to parent their child. Now, you can get an emergency order to get that parent back and bring the child back, but that's not kidnapping. If there is an order in place, so if you're not married, but you have a court order that says who has custody and someone doesn't bring a child back, then we have an issue. So you don't have to be married, but there has to be some legal document that states who the legal parents of this child is to say it's kidnapping.
Right, okay, so that's one of those things where even if you have kind of an amicable situation, you may need to have a custody agreement in place, especially if you're not living together.
Right.
That states, who has custody when and who's taking kids when and how. And what they have permission to do with those kids.
Right, and we're very specific. When we draw up an order or separation agreement, I'm always very specific about what the time is when the exchange is supposed to be, because if someone comes and doesn't bring back your child and you don't have a court order, then law enforcement can't help you. They can't bring that child back to you without an order to enforce. So even if you have a separation agreement that is really a contract between you two that says that you're supposed to have the child returned to you at noon today and that doesn't come back, law enforcement can't help you because there's not a court order that says that that child is to be with you. So for custody issues, a lot of times, even if you're amicable, it's really a good thing to have what we call a consent order about custody, where you agree on the terms and have a judge sign off on that in case something happens in the future that things sort of go awry.
Okay, she says, can you explain it again? I think she's a bit confused. Hey, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle. Parental kidnapping is not by definition if you, let's say you're just separated, you live in two separate households, or even if you're together and someone takes your child, the other party takes your child out of state or takes them away out of your custody. If there is no court order in place regarding who has custody of that child, then it's not kidnapping. Because that other parent, unless a court has decided otherwise, has a right to have custody of that child. So for it to be kidnapping or contempt or violation of an order, there has to be a court order signed by a judge and filed in a court of law for law enforcement to enforce, to say that that child is not to be in the custody of the other parent.
Okay, so basically there has to be a court order in place in order for there to be, quote unquote,
kidnapping.
Kidnapping.
Right.
And if there's not a court order in place, people can just,
they can. They're doing nothing illegal by taking the child out of state or to another residence, because there's nothing that says, there's no legal document that says they can't do that.
Okay. Even if you have an agreement in place, but if it's not a court order, you're not bound. Right,
because a policeman has to have a court order to enforce. And a separation agreement is just a contract. It's like buying a car. You may breach a contract, but you're not doing anything illegal for the police to go and get your child back.
Got it.
Doesn't seem fair, but that unfortunately is the rules that we work under.
Right, and I know that there's a lot of these rules that don't seem super fair.
Right. Because what I tell my clients is, justice is not justice, and it's not fair. You have to remember that when you go into court, you're going in front of a judge that has 20 cases on their docket that day. And you have 2 hours, let's say, in front of them for a temporary custody hearing. So you've got someone sitting on a bench who doesn't know you, who may be cranky or had a long day or not feel good, and they're going to make decisions about you and your family that can impact you for the rest of your life. So anything that we can do and that you can do to help yourself work it out between you and the other party, we always advocate for that. Because then you still have some control over the issue.
Absolutely, and that's a good point. Is that when you are negotiating, as long as you can keep negotiating and you don't draw that hard line in the sand, it's possible to get to a win-win situation.
It is, but you have to also remember that we say that when we're in mediation, when we're trying to settle something, that if everybody walks away equally unhappy, then we've had a good outcome. Because when you settle, everybody has to give up a little bit. And so there are some lines in the sand that you may not want to cross, but then you can look at the bigger picture and say, well, I can sort of give a little bit here if you'll do this for me. So it's kind of a balancing act.
Absolutely. And I think that that's kind of a thread I sense from a lot of what you're saying is everything here is a balancing act.
It is, because you're not going to get everything you want. Because even though it may not seem fair, what I have to work within the boundaries of are what the statutes and the law say, which may not be fair, but you have to balance, if I give up this, what will I get in court? Will I get a better deal if I go to court? That's really the balancing act that you have to ask yourself.
Good point, yeah. So there was a question earlier that Jen Bordeaux posted about being a business owner and divorce. And thank you, Leslie. And how does divorce affect a business?
What you have to remember about, we're what we call an equitable distribution state, which means whatever assets you acquire during the marriage is a marital asset. So your business may be in your name and you run the business, but it's a marital asset. So whatever the value of that asset is at the date you separate, then the other spouse is entitled, as a beginning point, is entitled to half of the value of that business. Same thing goes with retirement. A lot of people don't understand that, well, I earned my 401k, that's my pension. But if you earned it during the marriage, that other partner is entitled to half the value of what that is. Because the state looks at marriage as a unit, that each of you are working toward building and bettering that unit. So each of you are entitled to half of the value of what that unit acquired during the marriage.
Okay, so yeah, that's a good point, is that I think a lot of people are shocked that, you know, an ex-wife can come in and claim half of their pension or half of their retirement and 401k,
right,
and all kinds of assets that they maybe weren't expecting, including a business.
Right, and so you have to, and there are ways to, you know, a lot of times we're all about, we also do prenuptial agreements, and people, some people go, ooh, not good. But we always advocate for them. It's not saying that your marriage is going to fail, but it's saying here's what we've talked about financially and what's important to us, and we've agreed that this is how we want things to be in our marriage. Some people have everything together, some people have everything separate, and it's just a matter of what works for you. And so if you have a prenuptial agreement and something does go wrong, then you don't have to go through all of those issues when you separate, because you've already sort of thoughtfully thought through that, so that everybody, it's sort of a win-win, that everybody knows what's going to happen. So you sort of avoid a lot of extra pain and time and money and those sorts of things.
Are there post-nuptial agreements in North Carolina?
There are. We call them anti-nuptial agreements. People who are married can contract with one another. They can't contract about custody, but they can put in a contract about anything about spousal support, finances, buying homes, land, those sorts of things. So whatever people agree on and want to do during a marriage and contract, they are welcome and can do that in North Carolina.
Okay, that's a good point. What about an inheritance? If, say, one party inherits, you know, quite a bit of money.
Right.
How does that work in a marriage? And especially, you know, if the two parties then get divorced, is the other party, you know, entitled to some of that inheritance?
It depends. We always answer questions that way. If the inheritance came to you as a gift, just to you, that's your separate property. So anything you had prior to the date of marriage and anything that was given to you, specifically you as a gift, is your separate property. So it sort of backs out of the marital estate, and that's yours, and the other party is not entitled to any portion of that. It doesn't matter if you keep it in a separate account. It just matters that that gift came to you separately and that you're keeping track of what that is. And so if you would separate, let's say you had $200,000 and came to you as an inheritance and you wanted to pay down a mortgage that you had as a marital home. You have a really good argument to say, if I sell that home, that first $200,000 is mine because my separate property went into the house. So there's still ways to keep it separate, even though you may sort of commingle it into a marital asset.
Okay, so this actually brings an interesting question. What about a case where you have one spouse who is the primary earner, and they make all of the money, they've made all the mortgage payments, so you've got this other spouse here who's maybe been a stay-at-home parent.
Right.
How much are they entitled to if they haven't been earning anything and they haven't made any payments towards anything?
Well, they're entitled to half of it, because you have to remember that the stay-at-home spouse is doing a job too, and part of the job is they were allowing the other spouse to go out, make money, advance their career while they're home taking care of the home and the family, so they're doing a job too. So North Carolina says you're entitled to some benefit for that, and so even though you didn't make one mortgage payment, you're still entitled to one half of the equity in the house.
Okay.
Because you contributed to it in a way.
Right. You know, and that's a good point, you know, is that, you know, even though you may not think that you have a right to certain things, that
Right.
you may very well, have a right to quite a bit more
Right.
than you think you do.
Exactly. And so a lot of, and the other issue about property goes hand in hand with spousal support. Spousal support, they call it permanent alimony, but it's never permanent. Generally, our courts in Wake County start with half the length of the marriage is going to be our starting point for how long your alimony is going to last. Now that can vary, certainly, but it's sort of a starting point. So at some point, you're going to have to go, you may go back to college, you may have been out of the workforce for a while. So the courts understand that. So alimony is really to help you get back on your feet so that you can then support yourself, because your other spouse is not going to do that for the rest of your life.
Right. And there was actually kind of an interesting point that you made to me in a previous conversation that, spousal support, even if you're entitled to spousal support, you may not get it for several months.
Right, and a lot of times that's what the planning process is about. That people come and say, I want to separate. There's no domestic violence going on. They may be in separate rooms. They're still sort of cordial to one another. It's not miserable. And so what I tell them is, one, make sure you got your own checking account open. Open some credit. Any money that you can sort of squirrel away, so that you're going to need 2 or 3 months of money and funds in the event we can't get in front of a judge for 2 or 3 months. You're going to have to pay your bills some way, because once you leave and there's no court order in place, the other spouse is not obligated to pay a dime for your behalf because he's not ordered to. And so you may have to pay your own rent. You may have to put down your own deposits. You may have to buy your own groceries and take care of your kids for a couple of months until you can get in front of a judge so that they can order some spousal support or child support. So that's part of the planning process too.
And that's a really good point, is that, you really, if you can at all be safe about it,
right.
Planning is
the key. Yes. And it's not, you have to remember too that 2 households can never live as one. And although the courts say you get to maintain your lifestyle that you had, it rarely works that way. So you're used to living in a 5,000 square foot house in a nice neighborhood and going on vacations. The hard reality of that is, for the most part and for most folks, that's not going to continue. So we've got to figure out the best way to move you forward and put you in a place where you're safe and you're comfortable, but it may not be to the standard that you're used to, and that's just the reality of it.
Right. And how common is something like bankruptcy after a divorce?
It used to be, when we were back in the Great Recession, it was very common. Today it's not so much. People have gotten, I think, a little smarter about their finances. I do recommend, and we have a great bankruptcy attorney that we recommend folks to, that if you have a lot of unsecured debt, that it may be better for you to roll that into a bankruptcy, because then that can help you in some ways make a fresh start so that you're not so strangled up with debt. So it's not a bad thing for some people, but I think it needs to be done thoughtfully before you just rush into it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great stuff. I know let's go ahead and announce your workshop again, because I know a lot of people have hopped on since.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. It's For a Better Life. It's part of what our philosophy here is at New Direction Family Law, is that we really want everyone to have the life that they want and deserve. Separation and divorce is sort of like a death, that your hopes, your dreams for the future are no longer what you thought they would be. So we thought, what better way than to provide some education and workshops around the areas of your life that may change, which is health, wealth, wisdom, and love. They're on the first Saturday of each month. Our first one is January 7th. It's from 9 to 11. It's in Raleigh, it's close off the Beltline. It's sort of convenient for everyone. If you go to our website, which is New Direction Family Law, there is, you'll see For a Better Life. Just click on that. The first one's free. We have all of our panelists that will be there to talk about their specialties and what they're going to offer in their workshop. So we hope you'll come, that you'll gain some insight, and that you'll join us on the first Saturday of every month. throughout 2017 so that we can help you move forward and have the life that you want and deserve.
Okay, cool. If somebody receives SSI benefits only, is bankruptcy an option?
And I'm going to not be able to answer that question because I'm not a bankruptcy attorney. And so I'm happy for them if they want to email me, Elizabeth at New Direction Family Law. I can put you in touch with an expert in bankruptcy who can answer those questions for you. But I am not, that's not my field. I'm not a sort of a general practitioner, so I don't feel comfortable answering that, but I can certainly give you information to move you in a direction that can.
Right, and those are, one of the things I've learned is that, law is such a very specific, every niche, every area of law is very specific,
right.
And there's a lot of information there. And, in talking to family law attorneys or business attorneys, they really don't have a good understanding of bankruptcy,
right.
And how it affects things. And the different types of bankruptcy that are available, mm-hmm. And when you might use one or another, and there's a lot of subtlety and shades of gray there when deciding as far as a bankruptcy and how that would affect your finances and your credit and everything else. So,
right.
I mean, that's really, something that you have to talk to
an expert about.
That kind of an expert about.
Exactly. What I can tell you about bankruptcy and family law is that if you have a pending property action in court and you file bankruptcy, then the family court action is stayed. Nothing's going to happen in my arena until the bankruptcy is taken care of.
Okay, sorry about that. My phone rang and it went jumping off the books. Well. We've got it all stacked on, so my apologies. Wow. Yeah. So, that to reiterate that, if you've got a bankruptcy going on, it can definitely disrupt everything in the family law world.
Right.
We were doing so good, and then suddenly the whole thing decides to topple on us.
Oh well.
Sorry, guys. Yeah. So that's a good point. Is you definitely don't want to be having a bankruptcy going on while you're dealing with a separation or divorce. Right. Sorry about that. Our apologies. I bet you got a good look at the chandelier, though.
Oh, yes. So what I want to say to folks is that if you have questions about separation and divorce, the best thing to do is go see a family law attorney, whether it's me or someone else that you may know or someone that recommended to you, and just find out what your legal rights and options are. We don't have what I call a dog in the fight about whether you separate or not, but if you choose to, then we want to make sure that you're educated and that you have the support and advocacy that you need that helps you move your family in the direction that you want to go. And to do that, you need to have, some information and education to know what's best for you.
Right. And so, just because somebody is, not sure of the direction of their marriage, scheduling that consultation mm-hmm. can really open your eyes to so many things. Right.
And it doesn't mean that, and remember, just because you separate, a lot of people separate sort of to give everybody a break. And you can sign a separation agreement. You can have court orders. And until you're divorced, you can always reconcile. So, and a lot of people do, but at least that if you're going to separate, that these are my options, these are my best choices, and this is the road that I want to go down. And then have a family law attorney that can advocate and speak for you to help you get the best settlement.
That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
So how would somebody go about getting in touch with you? How would somebody go about choosing a family law attorney?
Well, they can get in touch with us by calling our office, 919-719-3470, or go to our website. That's the best place because it gives you a feel about what our philosophy is. We are very much about trying to work things out, but I'm also a very good advocate, and I will fight and advocate for my clients so that they get the best and what they deserve. But we're not a starting out point of what we call scorched earth. If you come into me and say, I want to get the other party, and you're so angry and all you want to do is win and get back at them, that's where we need to help and step back and look at what your goals really are. And so if that's the type of attorney you want, that's really not us. We're more Let's see what we can do to try to work things out. If we can't work things out, then yes, we'll go the other route. But we want to help you move through and balance out mental health, emotional, financial, and what works best for you in all of those arenas. So those are things to think about. What really are your end goals when you're talking about or thinking about what kind of family law attorney that you want.
Right, and it's worth noting that it is vastly more expensive if you're not able to work with a mediator and you have to go litigate.
It is. I mean, and there are times when you just have to litigate, that there are just cases that don't settle. But I would say 99% of them do. But if you're going to court because you want an extra $100 in spousal support a month, and it's going to cost you $15,000 to get that, balance that out. You know, what am I getting for what I'm putting into it? And sometimes backing off, taking a little less finishes it. And you can take a breath, you can breathe, you can focus on raising your children, you can focus on your job, you can focus on yourself. And not, because litigation can be a full-time job, and you sort of have to balance out, what am I going to get at the end of the day?
Right. So one of the questions that I have, and we'll start wrapping things up here in the next couple of minutes, is, you know, a lot of people complain about child support. Their spouse has to pay child support,
right,
and they have to go back and have it recalculated, and there's all this mystery around child support and a lot of angst.
Right. And quite frankly, child support's the easiest part of our job. If everybody's employed or a W-2 employee and we know what everybody's income is, we go by child support guidelines. So it's based on the number of children you have, what your income is, what the other party's income is, who pays for health insurance, are there extraordinary expenses, and the calculator then brings out a number and it says what you should pay for child support. And you can go online, go on the web, and just put in a search of North Carolina child support guidelines, and it'll pull up the calculator for you. And you can see what the other party should be paying for child support. So it's no mystery, really. It's what the guidelines say it is.
Right. But if you have, you know, children from another marriage and you have to recalculate, is that also taken into account with the...
It is. If you're paying support for another child, let's say you're paying $300 a month in child support for another child, not of your relationship, then that $300 is deducted from that party's income, which makes your income lower, which makes your child support lower. So it doesn't seem fair because you have a child with this partner, but he also has another child that the state says he needs to take care of. So they sort of have to balance that out in a way.
Right.
Yeah. The other issue with child support quickly is that it's really based on the number of overnights that you have with your children. So if you have more than 123 overnights with your child, then you go to Schedule B, which also reduces your child support. So it's also an issue and sort of something you need to think about when you're thinking about custody. They sort of go hand in hand.
Okay. Yeah, so the number of nights that you
Right.
have your child affects how much you have to pay.
Exactly.
So Jen had a great question about what's the difference between child support enforcement and working with an attorney for child support.
Great question. A lot of folks who don't have the resources to hire an attorney but do need help with child support can go to child support enforcement, and each county has one where the county attorney represents you in your child support action so that you incur no attorney's fees. But they get a court order entered, they enforce it. The drawback is, although they're very good attorneys, they also have a huge caseload. So it may take more time to get into court or have that order enforced, but you still may get the same result. It's just a matter of how much time it'll take. So it's a good resource for folks who can't afford attorney's fees.
How do they find those resources?
You can go online and each go to, it's the AOC website, Administrative Office of the Courts, and just put in a search for child support. In each county, it'll pull up the information and how to get in touch with each county's child support enforcement.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good point. So if somebody has absolutely no money and they're having to go through a divorce and figure that out, what resources do you send them to and give them to?
A lot of times, one, child support enforcement. Also, legal aid can help you in each county depending on their caseload. They work on sort of like a sliding scale. I know in Wake County and a lot of counties we have a family court system that has sort of a self-help clinic. so that a lot of times what I say to clients is, you go file that complaint, you get a court date and get it started, and then if you need me to go to court with you, I can do that. So they're just paying me to prepare and go to court, but they're able to do the front end of the work. And a lot of times it gets settled and they don't really incur a lot of fees to do that. Domestic violence issues, when people come to me and need an emergency order, I send them to Interact, because Interact can help them prepare their complaint, get them the temporary order entered, and so then they just incur fees about going back and getting that permanent order. So there are all sorts of ways that you can reduce your cost, but still have sort of in the background an attorney sort of advise you and help you through the process.
Great stuff. Thank you.
You're
This
welcome.
has been fantastic.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Thank you for letting me come and talk to your folks. I know you have a huge audience, so I appreciate that. So if they're not going through separation, divorce, or they know someone who is, I hope that you'll get in contact with me, because I'm happy to sit down and listen to your story, and then talk about what options you may have and help you move forward.
Yeah, and she's got the most gorgeous office, y'all. It is adorable and beautiful.
We do. We're really thoughtful not only about how we practice law, but the environment that we practice it in. So when you come in, we have a house. It's a home that you feel comfortable in, that you may not have, that you can feel safe and secure, and we hope calm, so that you can, listen to our advice, make your decision, and do it in a thoughtful, progressive, and safe way.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
So tell us again about your workshop and how people can get in touch with you.
Sure. It's For a Better Life. First one is January 7th. Starts at 9 o'clock to 11. You can sign up on our website at New Direction Family Law. It's free, no cost. Come and see what we're offering for the year. I think it's 17 is going to be a banner year for us, and we want to help it be a banner year for you and start off on the right foot and how to really change your life in significant ways.
So that one is on January 7th. And how do they sign up for that?
They can go to our website, New Direction Family Law, click on For a Better Life, and it takes you through the process, easy to sign up, and then they just show up and get the materials, and then they can sign up for future workshops if they want to, or they can do it that day, or go online and do it for October now, or whatever they want to do. So.
And how much are the other workshops?
They are $26.99. Have Genevieve telling me. And that really is, we thought that was a good median price. We know we're offering very important information, and our facilitators are well known. They have their own large audience, so we believe that it's a minimal investment that can help you really make positive changes in your life.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. And what is your phone number, email, website, all of that good stuff?
Great. It's www.newdirectionfamilylaw. Email, you can email me if you have, I'm happy. I can't give legal advice without really sitting down, but if you have a quick question, I'm happy to, especially the one about the bankruptcy, or if I can answer a quick question, it's Elizabeth at New Direction Family Law. You can call our office at 919-719-3470 and set up an initial consultation. I have another attorney here, Sarah Hink, who is of the same mindset, has great experience. So either one of us can talk to you, and we're happy to do that to see if there's a way that we can help.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
Bye, thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a good day. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.